Minister, some of us thought the Housing for All targets were inadequate to begin with, and the housing crisis ever worsening is testimony to the fact that that is the case. But there's now a growing consensus that we need to dramatically increase our targets, that Housing for All targets of 33,000 on average a year are not enough. We're not delivering on the social and affordable targets in any event. So the question is, are you considering changes in the National Development Plan in order to ramp up the plans for housing, and in particular, I would say, social and affordable housing?
So the Minister for Housing has indicated that the level of housing targets for the years ahead is something that he's considering. You'll be aware that the Government agreed in March to the deferral of the approval of a revised national planning framework and to set out a revised timeline for the process. This is informed in a significant degree by census data and the postponement of the census in 2021 due to the pandemic, resulting in the delayed publication of crucial census outputs relating to housing and demographics. In light of the extent of recent demographic change and the implications for future population projections and structural housing demand, the Government has decided to defer the approval of a draft revised national planning framework until the full set of data required to properly consider matters relating to demographics and population projections has been completed by the ESRI. They have currently produced a draft final report, which is now subject to peer review, and the independent report will be published by the ESRI once all the final reviews have been completed. So to recap, the ESRI are doing an independent research project in relation to what future housing needs could be, and then once that has been received by the Minister for Housing and considered by the Government, that after that would then lead to a consideration of what our future housing output target should be for the medium term.
Look, the ESRI have already indicated 33,000, which the targets in Housing for All are inadequate. There's a general consensus we need at least 50,000 a year. When the Housing for All targets were first set, Minister, I remember in my local authority, we did the maths on them, and when we did it, it was clear that the failure to take into account those who would join the housing list meant that at the end of Housing for All, this is a few years ago, there will be more people on the housing list in Oireachtas than there was when the targets were set. Right? So the targets were always inadequate, and the Government seemed unwilling to acknowledge that fact. But it's now absolutely clear that they are wholly inadequate. And then we have the problem that you can't even deliver on those targets when it comes to social and affordable housing in particular. So talking about the census being delayed and the national planning framework, well, that's all well and good. But surely there's a recognition now we need to urgently ramp up the targets and deal with the problem that we are unable to deliver even on the existing inadequate targets, and do something about it in terms of the National Development Plan.
The publication by the Government tomorrow morning of the latest update on the delivery of the Housing Action Plan will show the progress that we are making in the delivery of our housing targets. You only have to look at the first quarter of this year, Deputy, to see the number of commencements, to see the number of homes that are currently being built at the moment, to see that we will deliver and do more than deliver our targets for this year, and that in turn will set the foundation then for the delivery of more homes into the future. In order for us to make the progress to building more than 40,000 homes per year, we need to build up our ability to do it. We need to have a labour sector that's big enough with the people available to do the work. We then need to ensure that we have the right projects being delivered, and we are doing that at the moment. And while we have more progress that we always need to make in terms of supply and affordability, what you are seeing, and this is increasingly a rare case across Europe at the moment, Deputy, is more houses being built, more apartments being built, more homes being built year after year by this government, with, I believe, this reaching a height under our administration this year, allowing us to set even better targets for the years ahead.
But it's still not enough. And we have record numbers homeless, huge numbers on housing lists, and a particular failure to deliver social and affordable housing. So even the stuff that's built is too expensive, completely out of the reach of the vast majority of people, and it is not enough. That is clear. You raised the issue of capacity. Absolutely. The NDP says you're going to strengthen the capacity of local authorities to deliver social and affordable housing. Now, the local authorities at the moment seem to have no capacity to deliver housing. We've argued for a state construction company and for massive recruitment of tradespeople, construction workers and so on in the local authorities, so the state actually has its own ability to deliver capacity. But instead you leave it to the private sector, which has said, good body stockbrokers, others in the private sector says, we don't have the capacity to do it. So the question I have is, if the targets have to go up, if it's clear you can't even meet the existing targets, what are you going to do to build up the capacity to deliver the housing, particularly the social and affordable housing we so urgently need?
I don't understand your argument. It doesn't make any sense to me, Deputy. If you're acknowledging on one hand that the capacity isn't there, how is creating a state entity overnight immediately going to create that capacity? I don't see how you're going to do that. But you're acknowledging that for some time the capacity wasn't there because our construction sector needed to grow. Regardless whether it's the state trying to employ them or a private sector developer trying to employ them, the reality is that we had constraints by not having enough people available within our country to build the homes that we need. That is improving. We're now beginning to see more people work in the construction sector than we've seen in some time, in part due to the work that is underway now with an improved apprenticeship pipeline. And Deputy, the inference that you always have that anything that the private sector does is bad or not to be trusted, anything that's motivated by a home being built by a developer who in turn wants to make a profit out of it. Deputy, that kind of ideology is just a recipe for Ireland building fewer homes in the future. We have and need local authorities and approved housing bodies to be building social and affordable housing. We need to do more of that, Deputy, accept that, but we also need a private sector capable of standing on its own 2 feet, capable of building more homes. We're making progress in the delivery of that.